So for those of you wondering about this, this is FM Trainer TV. I'm the creator of FM Trainer TV, where we have the upcoming broadcast schedule. Today is a FileMaker Server Q&A. I'm going to ask Jacob for the first part of this to go and retrieve all the documents he has internally since he's been busy doing everything else. Jacob's going to be on vacation. So for all of you who want to start a server fire next week, that would really be inadvisable. No upgrades.
Please don't light your server on fire, specifically next week. I'll be on vacation. Thank you all.
Today is a conversation about FileMaker Server. So, once again, for Jacob. So I need all the documents related to your checklist, Jacob. When you people do new servers, they do upgrades, things like that. I want you to, I'm not going to necessarily share the documents, but I want to collect all this stuff for next Thursday. So next Thursday, really interesting conversation. So it's a trial for something we want to do. We have people who keep coming to us saying that I have version blah of FileMaker, and should I upgrade? How do I upgrade? What are the considerations to upgrade? I'm going to have that conversation next week without Jacob Taylor here. So your mileage may vary as to the quality of next week's live stream. That being said, I'm thinking this is going to be an ongoing, not at the 1 o'clock time slot, but we'll probably dedicate another hour during the day once a week to have this conversation with people who don't know about the live stream, don't know who we are, or that they particularly care, even though we're really nice people, and they want to understand how to upgrade from FileMaker, some version greater than or equal to 7 and less than or equal to version 20. And so that's the range. From 7 to 20 are the versions that we care about. And we will be happy to talk to you about what are the considerations, what are the things to do with that. If you stay up to date, once again, it's never a problem. Anyway, so that's next week. That's kind of it's a test drive to see what happens. Some of you won't care about it, don't care. But if you know someone that uses FileMaker, that they have a version that's, say, 19 or even 20, but 19 for sure, or older, then feel free to invite them to come and bring a question. If they want to have a sample file, something like that, let us know. Send us the sample, send us their database with a password on it or something like that. We won't necessarily show it to anyone, but we want to help you, get you going, show you that it can work, because there's a lot of security benefits. There's a ton of performance benefits to upgrading FileMaker. The product is hugely faster than it was 10 years ago. And when I say hugely faster, I mean generally upwards of more than 300% faster. Not 30% or 3%, 300 or more percent. That's 3 times as fast. We're going to do that at 1 o'clock next Thursday on July 24th. Today's conversation, let's pivot forward, Margaret. If you want to go to Claris, let's start with this. If you want to go to claris.com, Margaret, and then you want to hit the resources button, a tab there at the top, and hold. Under resources, you have the knowledge base. That's where like tech support articles are in there. You can do searches for that. That's pretty awesome. There's another one I want to point over to the right is the Claris engineer. It should say engineering blog, but Claris. Oh, there it is, a Claris blog and an engineering blog. Mark, can you go to the engineering blog at the top under resources? Go to engineering blog. This is awesome right here. This material right here, for those of you wondering about this, is where when Claris engineering gets technical, sometimes it's so technical that it causes my head to explode. You can see that we have uploading database of FileMaker Server using the admin API. Let's Encrypt, which is kind of, we did a kind of a 1 day, 2 day thing with Let's Encrypt with Wim DeCourt from Soliant. Really, at the end of the day, that's that free SSL that's kind of janky in terms of its integration with FileMaker so far, because it requires a restart every 90 days or something in FileMaker, and most people don't run and restart their FileMaker server every 90 days. It's kind of weird. You only want FileMaker server to run for a year or two without having a problem. Now, if you run an operating system update, then maybe you get a restart, but it's one of those sort of things. So then you have upgrading FileMaker Server to 2024 and Ubuntu 2204. Once again, we could talk about that. There's questions about this. There's a lot of this material stuff we've done already. With that in mind, we go to the updates and release notes Margaret has right there. It's under support, second one down. Go to resource. There it is. It's loading. So today or a couple days ago, Claris shipped 2102, just the FileMaker server. So there's not a update for Pro or Go or anything else. It's just FileMaker Server. And they found if we press the release notes right there, you hit the view button, we can see the updates that were made. We talked about these kind of last week to kind of preview them a little bit, but the idea was that there was a lot of WebDirect bugs that somehow slid through testing, and so Claris addressed these pretty substantial WebDirect button issues. Y'all would have run into these next week with Nick Hunter on the WebDirect training. But since that time, we've been updating our servers, and so the current version of FileMaker Pro is 21.0.1, and then the FileMaker Server is 21.0.2. Right, so very, very important, and there's a couple security-related issues. My guess is that there's probably 20 or 30 fixes in there, right? So
I'm taking it as indicative that they actually wrote you see the non-line right there. This release includes general security improvements. They don't usually note that, so I'm taking that as indicative that there's a bunch of stuff thrown in there. We don't know what it is. They may tell us, they may not. You're on 21.1, please update. That's what I'm
right, but also gets back to the issue. Now, some things are like, I think 21.0.1 exposed a couple things that they didn't mean to expose. And so the issue is that, but if you have older versions of FileMaker, there's tons of security issues over the decades with an S that have been patched and fixed. Once again, this is part of that conversation that I'm happy to have anytime, but we're going to start it next Thursday, and it'll be kind of this ongoing thing at some point where we're talking about I'm on FileMaker 11 or I'm on FileMaker 16 and should I upgrade? Yes, right? And what does it take to do that, and how difficult or confusing is that? Officially, if you're on we're only endorsing FileMaker 7 and forward. If you're on something prior to FileMaker 7, and I've had people email me about this in the last week, it's too far gone. It's too far gone. Start with a new database. Feel free to fresh copy of FM Starting Point, which once again, that's another thing we've been working on with the new version. If you really, really need a fresh one, you want the latest one. It's currently 24. We call it version. We call our versions number match the year. Pretty awesome, right? So 24 X3 on the light, which is a training one that we use, which for me, I would prefer to start with. It's very simple, and it makes things work really well. And it actually works with WebDirect pretty well, which is nice.
Rick Fosnot mentioned in relation to the upgrading long distance that he has an 18.3. He's running on FileMaker 18.
I think Rick actually shot us an email, was asking about upgrading in general. And so the conversation, we can talk about a little bit about now if we want, but generally, the farther back you go, the harder it is, but it's very doable. It depends on how complicated, not even how complicated your solution is, it's how many things in your solution are externally communicating. So if you have a plugin, that's an external thing. It might be a FileMaker plugin, but your database is talking to this external thing that's not in the FMP12 file, right? And so the plugin has to be updated. You have to make sure those commands or calls are still available. If the plugin's not available, then you need to figure out what that looks like, because you're going to have to remediate that issue, right? A lot of people would use the XML gateway with PHP. Even some stuff at RCC is still that way, where the new stuff is with DAPI. So how hard of a lift it is to get over that. That's not a 2-minute conversation. It's a larger conversation about what you're doing and how you need to adapt that. But some people, they use Go, they might use WebDirect. So yeah, 18.3 should not be that big of a deal, but once again, it says your FileMaker file talk to SQL somewhere, like outside? Does it talk to Oracle? Does it talk to something else externally, right? So if it's Pro, Go, or WebDirect, or is it Web Publishing or whatever they called it back in 8 or 9, that should largely move forward okay. It should move forward. Might be some little things with it. Plugin, that's another consideration. So this is all part of that larger conversation. You got people to upgrade. Very, very important. Margaret, if you want to, well, I guess you could do it. Why don't we have you do it, since you have not done this before? And Margaret was like, I told Margaret, hey, we need to restart a FileMaker server. And she goes, I said, you have to shut the databases off first. She goes, how do I do that? And I went, oh, so part of this should be a training exercise. So Margaret, if you could go up to the top for us real quick and type. So first we have to do is we have to have the domain name of the FileMaker server. and you'll have a domain name if you have a functional SSL certificate. We talked about this the other day. So stream.addrcc.com. Now, if you just hit that, if you just hit that, you get this. Maybe. Oh, this is the other part of it. You need to put HTTPS on the front of it.
Okay.
I think that that's
I have intentionally left that, yes, kind of just so that you run into it a little
colon.
bit so you
There
can
we go.
demonstrate it. Yeah.
There you go. All right. So if you do this, then you know that you hit a functional FileMaker server, but you know the path is wrong. So the path is then, sorry, I'm a little too close here. The path is going to be /admin-console. Then you have to have a username and password for it, which is, I don't think Margaret has your updated password. There we go. All right, so we're into FileMaker Server. So we are logged in. Just for shits and giggles, top right corner, we have a little jingle bell thing. It says one alert. Average CPU has reached 95%. So I don't know when or why or how often that happened. That was 7:17, which was yesterday at
Noon.
Yeah, but what is that? That's 9 minutes
7
after
or
the
8.
hour.
It's UTC, I think. Unless they
Yeah.
finally fixed
Was that a
the time
backup?
zones.
Was that a backup for a snapshot or
No.
something?
Nope, that's somebody PSOSed or did something.
Except no one uses a server, so that makes me wonder what's going on. So if we take a look at, so you got that. Those are the alerts.
Oh. No, I updated the server yesterday. That was me updating the server.
Didn't you
Then
update this yesterday? Okay.
Yes, that was probably literally me installing 21.0.2.
Yeah, if you look over here, and if I do my little dry thingy over
yeah.
here, you have this thing over here, which is the number. I need to make that a little bit.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, that one. See that? So we have that for starters. That's excellent. Databases. So you click on databases, right? And this is where it's super important if you're going to screw around with the server. FileMaker historically on Mac and Windows, if you tell the operating system to shut down on Mac or Windows, and I know Jacob will probably have updated guidance on this, but Margaret, if you just clicked on the desktop with your mouse, click over on the desktop, and then click at the top under Apple and tell it to, don't do it, but go to shutdown or restart, either one, okay? Shut down or restart, okay? The operating system tells FileMaker Server to please shut down or restart. And the operating system, once again, doesn't really give, okay, so Claris, being who they are, is a small wheel in the world of the tech. Apple, which is funny, they own Claris, and Microsoft especially, do not give a shit if FileMaker isn't done. It's literally, give me your wallet and your keys right now and shut down. And if you don't, you're going to collect some lead for your trouble. It's like some sort of mafia hit at a restaurant. Not good. And so if you sass back to the operating system, it just kills the processes, even if your databases aren't shut down, which means that you have crashed your database. You haven't done a proper shutdown on them. So you need to generally, as a general rule, and this guidance is universal back for years. And Jacob, I'm going to invite him momentarily here to color commentate on this a little bit. But you'd always go to the databases. Margaret, just bail out of that. Go over the databases. Then you click right here and you tell it to close all files. So if you go right there and you just go and do that, say close all. It says, are you sure? Are you really sure? And whatever. So it's actually doing it right now. So
yeah, in 21. I don't think that changed in 21, but these days, as you can tell, there were no clients connected to the server at the time that she clicked that. So it doesn't need to say disconnect in 2 minutes or something like that. If there were somebody plugged in to any of the files at all, it would have given her a timer. You can send them a message and then set up to some number of minutes to let them finish their work or whatever.
So once again, we do this first, then we go to the desktop, and then we go to the wherever it is on Windows, and you tell it, yeah, let's go ahead and do a shutdown or restart or whatever. We don't have to do it right now. That is the correct cycle because it ensures that the databases are closed properly. If you crash the files here because you rushed a restart, the restoration is the same as it would be if lightning hit the building, okay, and killed the power. The rest is that you don't use the crash files, you restore from the last good backup, right? Which could be 15 minutes old, an hour old. If you don't run backups, it could be months old, right? There are people who,
Daily. Yeah.
yeah,
Daily is what they do. Was that in 16 or 17 that they added that default
Yeah.
7-day?
So yeah, if you go over here to backups, hit backups for me, Margaret.
Backups, yeah.
Yeah.
Are you looking for the schedule?
So real quick, so you can come over. It's funny about this. There's a bug in this, by the way. I ran into this yesterday, right? So what's really interesting about this is that on the right, it shows you the backups that have run. This is not the schedule. This is the backups run. If you say all backups right here, okay, this should show you sequentially what backups have run. Now, I should have an hourly running in here, but it last hourly ran like 20 hours ago, which ain't good. Okay. And I'm wondering if Jacob actually is that incompetent or there's a bug. And what I've discovered is if you go to configuration, Margaret.
Is it because there's...
No, it's actually a bug that someone should report. And you go to schedules right here.
Love finding bugs.
Yeah, we are. And then you go to, where's the hourly? Is hourly on here? Oh,
Right.
Oh, it's right there, hourly. Okay. Do me a favor, click on that and just tell it to, go back and open the databases for me real quick. Sorry. Back to databases. Open all the databases. Would be great.
Learning moment for the audience. If you try and
Yes.
run a backup with no open files, nothing happens. And also, if you set up email notifications, it will yell at you because you just tried to do something silly.
Yeah, so when you run backups, it's only running the open files. It pauses them, then it runs. So now go ahead, Margaret, go over to schedules. Click on that. Tell it to, click on that. It's going, now tell it to run now, okay? And we'll just watch this for a second. It'll come over here and say something about running now, probably.
It's done.
It's done already? Okay, that was really fast. Now go back to data, backups right here. And notice it hasn't updated, okay? The last backup was 21 hours ago, but we're pretty sure, and you're like, well, that's not showing all. No, come over here, click on that, click up that up there, click that. It's showing all, including the hourly, okay? That's a bug. Bug, okay?
Well, what happens if I filter it?
Well, then you, but I said all because on my server, like we're looking at a test server here, on my server, I have 4 or 5 different solid state drives connected to it. And every little bit I'm backing up to different ones. So if I say all, I need to see all, and all doesn't work. So questions about this from Jesse or anyone? Margaret, do we have questions?
So
Claire? Let's see.
yeah, I just checked the schedule. That's like really misleading what it's showing you. Interesting. I
That's-
see what they're doing here actually. So I think that is so this is one of those things where programmers don't like either get good specs or secondarily think things through. Or
Yeah.
F in letter sort order is before H, right? So it's putting all the F folder names before the H folder names, which is why you end up with hourly as down there. You can see the on demand that you just ran 2 minutes ago. It is present on the screen. It's just absolutely not where it should be, which is at the top in front of that FMS 21 hours ago, right? That's what that is. So you have correct sorting within the folder. The FMSs are sorted correctly and the hourlies are sorted correctly, but those should be intermingled because you've asked for all schedules. Anyway, someone should clip that and send it to Claris because that's what they need to fix. And we're covering upgrades and stuff like that today. So a thing to note here, this whole interface was redone in 21. There's an older version for 20. It didn't substantially change between 17 and 20. And so like you may have seen that for a few years. If we're talking about older upgrades though, there's again another step further back, which is the old admin console. And that would have been 16 and previous. I've worked with that, which it was a little different over time, but basically looked the same between 12 and at least 12 and 16. I haven't worked with, technically I've worked with 110 server, I think.
Basically, Ken is confirming that it is not currently sorted by letter and not by time.
I actually would make a joke that it's doing the FileMaker thing. So if you all know, if you like sort records by date, for example, so all the records created, it's July 18th, right? So you create 100 records today, and then you have 100 records from yesterday. They'll show all of the ones today and they'll be in creation order. and then all the ones yesterday in creation order. And that is what this is doing. So each set within itself is sorted correctly, but not the total sort is wrong.
Yeah, holistically that sucks because really at the end of the day, if you wanted to see within just the one, you would just select the one schedule. But yeah, that's not, that's kind of goofy. I ran into that last night. All right, cool. All right. Well, so we have the backups that were part of this, the offline, the schedule with the updates. We know that Claris is actively working on generally updates across the board. I haven't got any more telemetry from them on that. So it's kind of a short day today unless someone has questions because it's kind of an open Q&A for Jacob about FileMaker Server. If Rick Fosnett has a specific question besides how do I upgrade?
Yep.
Do you have anything more specific than that?
I can't remember what his issue was for updating. I know he has an old server and it needed to talk to some old data system or something like that.
Okay.
But it's also like it was old Ubuntu. It was one of the older FileMaker Server versions that was on Ubuntu 18.04. I guess one of the other things to address actually is if you're a Linux person, you may note there's a newer Ubuntu out already. 24.04 came out in April. That's 2024, and then 04 the month, so April. And Claris doesn't support it, and may not. We don't know when that's going to happen. I assume at some point that will change.
Probably last quarter of the year or something like that. Margaret, hit dashboard. Do we actually see the operating system on here? It would be good if we did, but I don't know that we do.
It doesn't display it, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's kind of would be it. Ideally, you'd park it right. It
would be cool.
Yeah, it would be great to park it right down in here so you could see server version, and then the OS version would be kind of great. That way, you have one spot to see the shenanigans of what's going on. Oh, let's take a look at the settings on this one. This has got those things we talked about, right? Yep. Persistent cache disabled on this one, which is great. No, it's on.
No, I turned all of it on. It's all full.
Okay.
Except for the sync to disk one.
Yep. That's the performance implication setting. So persistent cache. Oh, that one actually may not be free on a performance basis. So at least per what I've read from Claris, persistent cache, when you turn it on, it's a resiliency setting. We've talked about that on live stream before. Yeah. The theory is it keeps recent commits to the database in RAM, and then if FileMaker Server dies, it can theoretically put those back in or something. Now, no word on whether that works or not. I honestly don't know. Just being honest, I don't know.
Built by the same people who didn't sort the backup list correctly.
Right.
So yeah,
so just with that qualifier. So
yes,
but from their own statements, that cuts the in-memory cache. When you usually, if you don't set that, that'd be 512 out of the box. You should raise it if it's the default. So that cuts it in half, and it uses that half for the persistent cache. There's an additional performance implication where if you do sync to disk, it actually puts it in that cache that I just mentioned, the cut in half chunk, and then it also writes it out to a file on disk. That is additional resiliency insofar as then they're sitting on the hard drive, and FileMaker Server really has something to look at when it comes back to try and put this file back together. Sounds great. I get it, whatever. But that means that you're writing it to no less than 3 or 4 places every time somebody writes a record to the solution. Yeah. And that is not, just politely, it's not free. That will have a performance impact. It may be a perfectly acceptable one. It may be you can put everything on screaming local NVMe drives that are 7 gigabytes a second and whatever, stuff like that to basically ameliorate or mitigate it. But it won't be free no matter what you're doing. So
some people are commenting here. Looks like Mikey Mike, one of the mics, I forget which Mikey Mike this actually is, says, I love the information. I don't use FileMaker Server. It's pretty interesting. And I said, well, then if you're using FileMaker, but you're not using FileMaker Server, that either means you're using Pro in a peer-to-peer fashion, which I don't recommend except on a kind of an ad hoc emergency basis, or you have local files that you're running, which makes sense, I guess, to a degree. I'm not picking on anyone, and I know Server's not, strictly speaking, free. It does take, like this server right here, Jacob, what's the minimum entry point? If we look at this server real quick, Margaret, if you want to take a look at that.
Yeah.
This is a Amazon ARM with an ARM processor. So it's not an Intel processor. It's not even an AMD processor. It's even further than that, ARM, which is a competing tech in a lot of ways superior to, I think, a lot of what people say Intel has. But the point is that you don't have to write a big check to get the processor. And so that's called a Graviton processor, I guess, fancy name for something like that. What size instance is this? Is this large? I think it's a T. Oh, you're muted.
Oh, I'm muted. My bad. It's a T4G large.
So T4, so that T means it's a burst. So that means you're not paying for a processor that'll run 100% all the time. Most of the time, FileMaker will use little bits, and it's idle most of the time. So T is you're going to have burst usage, so you get a discount because you're not using continuously. 4 is probably the variant or version number of it, because when I started off, it was T2 years ago. And then G is Graviton, which means it's ARM. So it's a burst version 4 with a Graviton processor. Large tells you about the RAM and the processor. So large is 8 gigs of memory and I think 2 processors. Is that correct?
Yep. Yes.
Okay. So this would run easily 5 or 10 people, depending upon what your needs are, right? Like if you have a giant database like Nick with his 500 million records, you probably need more horses than this. That being said, I don't think most people have a database with 500 million records or even 1 million records. I mean, RCC had one table with 14 million records in it, part of our stuff that we were managing with our finished goods system when we would email people and whatnot. But I think Jacob put it on a diet, but still that's kind of unusual to have that unless you have historical records about automated stuff that goes on, like a audit log. Essentially is kind of what this was. It was an audit log of all the emails that we'd sent out over the years, right? And we were up to 10 million or something like that, because there's quite a few people in the FileMaker community and they all sign up for stuff. So every time I email them, we'd keep a kind of a record of that. So
It was, you were correct. It was 14 million before we'll say Project Slim took place.
Project Slim.
It has naturally regained. We are not quite there yet, but we're very close to 2 million again. So.
All right, so Rex Arney has given us a question on YouTube. Thank you for the question. FileMaker Server, and I don't know which version, is giving me an error 795, renaming the progressive backup folder any direction. So let's talk about progressive backups and what those are. That I know backwards and forwards, but I'll let you take a first swing at it before I critique you, Jacob.
What? Oh, okay. I can answer it.
Sure, so go ahead.
What are progressive backups? Progressive backups, the first time you run them, it will write a complete backup out on the hard drive. And then the thing that makes it progressive is that every time after that, it won't do that. What it will do is it will take the changes from the last progressive and apply it to the file to produce the next. And it does that. You can change the setting, but it does that every 5 minutes. And so just on a argument basis, not a huge amount of data is going to change between 5 minutes ago and now, and that makes it a very quick thing to do.
So yeah, that's pretty accurate. So what it does, it has essentially at any given time, there are 3 copies of the database in the progressive folder. There's the progressive that it's actively building over the course of the 5 minutes, and then at the end of the 5 minutes, it rolls up. It takes the one that's been working on and it finalizes it, glues it together, and it makes it and it gives a timestamp. And it keeps that one plus one before that. So if you think about the process, so let's say that we have 2 old ones that if FileMaker dies, you have 2 backups you can go to that are separated by 5 minutes or whatever time interval you set, but by default 5. And so it's working on this third one. When that 5 minutes is up, it goes ding like a little Pop-Tart in your oven or microwave or something, and it rolls it up. It makes it. So then for a split second time, you have 3 complete backups. It takes the oldest one and ejects it, and then those 2 files become the 2 backups that will be then present for the next 5 minutes, and it's essentially started a new one. It takes the one they just made and it kind of reopens it, and it says, any changes I make. So if I go into Hot Air Balloon Ken and I change a photograph of him or I add some data, it's going to take those little bits of data and save them, and it collects all those over the course of 5 minutes, and it rolls it up. So that it only keeps 2. It only keeps 2 good ones, and then the one that it's working on. So if it crashes, the one it's actively working on, throw it away. You have 2 good ones, is the idea. progressive backups. So what's that error? I know we have other questions here. What's that error 795, Jacob? Do we have any idea what that is?
795 is an error renaming the backup. I don't actually have a cause reason for that, but I can tell you how to fix it, which is there's a couple things you can do either accidentally or not on purpose, we'll say, that would interfere with it. Most of them are permissions issues, to be honest, something like that. You can have situations where the things run, I'll say run too long, which means your hard drive is too slow. You should get a faster hard drive. And that's like an errant version of the same bug of that. It sends you the wrong email, I'll put it that way. But likelihood is I've seen this on a few different servers, and I haven't been able to figure out a proper why this is happening. However, to fix it, turn incrementals off, turn progressives off, clean the folder out, like it's on your disk somewhere, go delete everything that's in there, come back, turn it back on again.
Okay.
I don't know why that fixes it, because I don't know, I can't tell you affirmatively what the problem was in the first place. But I've had a few servers, it's like clean install. I'm not saying this happens eventually or something. And it won't do the thing. We turn email notifications on substantially every single server I set up. And you will then get emails every 5 minutes about this. It's very annoying, and you fix it quickly. So.
Yeah, so just keep in mind that if you open your FileMaker Server folder, which is in different spots on the different operating systems, there's a folder, there's a data folder, there's a backups folder, there's a live databases folder. There's also a progressive backups. You might see it referred to as IB or incremental backups. Only marketing calls it progressive backups. The Claris Engineering, when it was first created, called it incremental backups. And you'll see it referred to that way under the hood as processes or backup folders or things like that.
Yeah,
the word
that's why I had to correct my language. All the stuff, whenever I'm looking at it, says incremental.
Mikey Mike says, as a church festival program for assisting helping festival activities, used Excel for many years before a festival program. Okay, so yeah, so if you're like a very small nonprofit, you may not want the FileMaker Server. What is the Graviton processor costing us per month, Jacob, for this thing?
I think if I round up, it would be 60. It's not even that much. We're paying less than that. Probably 45 or 50 would be a better number. I'd have to go look it up, to be honest, and calculate it. But
okay, so but for a nonprofit, that's a chunk of money they may not have, right? So there you go.
Yeah.
Okay, so Jacob just said incremental system produces a full backup by applying the increments. That is a correct statement. Maybe I wasn't clear about that. Dave Angel says, to restore, I need a full backup and all the incremental progressive backups to restore. No, it doesn't. Damn it. All right, hang on. Margaret,
That's why I answered it.
I'm just going to show this. I'm going to show this, but I need to change.
You can demonstrate it. Go to your.
Yeah, just give me a second. I've got to adjust the in-flight. This is your captain speaking. We're going to be, turning off the seatbelt signs for everyone. Recommend that you stay in your seatbelted in the event that we run into some turbulence and we bang your head off the top of the ceiling of the airplane. It won't be our fault. So I'm going to share my screen here where I'm at. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Command K. I'm going to connect to my DBW2 server, which we managed to fix the connection on. This is a Mac server. It's the server that I personally maintain. I can maintain a Mac server first, a Windows server secondary, and I haven't learned command line enough to be comfortable with Linux. It is a thing. So here is the FileMaker server. I'm going to move the faces out of the way. So if I go into here and I'm going to, let me see if I can zoom in a little bit. Can I zoom? There we go. So I'm in this is my FileMaker server, my hard drive. I go to library, and down in here is a folder called FileMaker Server. This is the main folder for FileMaker Server. If I double click it, bring it up, here's what you got. So I'm going to close that like this. I'll make it a little taller. I'm going to close the logs. All right, there we go. These are all the folders you should recognize. These folders, I think, universally are on all three versions, or they should be for the most part. Admin, I don't know what it does. CStore, something about storage. Data is, I think, there's backups, there's caches. This is the live databases right here, in case we're wondering about that. Okay, these are the backups that get saved, not the incremental. These are the on demand, which are the ones we run, or they're one day, it runs at midnight or whatever. Those are all in there. And if I come down, where is the incremental backups at? Where would they, Jake, you want to give me a hint on where they hide these at? It's a
Oh,
folder.
sorry, backups.
They are in backups?
There's those, and then where's your progressives?
My progressive is probably not on.
Did you enable it?
Okay, so let's do that. So let's turn it on, see what happens. So I'm going to double click here, the admin console. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to tell it to log in. I'm going to sign in. You go to configuration, and I'm going to come down here to
Folders.
Folders, is that what it is?
Because it's where is it?
Backup folders, okay. My problem is I'm moving faces around here because I got Zoom doing stuff. Progressive backup is disabled, so that's not good. Is there an on? Enable. Creating the initial set of backups may impact server performance. So what it's doing, it's creating a full, complete copy of your database right now. And then going forward, it's only going to be saving the changes, but it has to start with a complete set, right? Does that make sense, everyone? So I'm going to hit OK. And then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to watch I'm watching down here. Yeah, see, it's a little more performing. See that? That's the processor down there chewing away, chewing away. I think it's like a 30 or 40 gigabyte set of databases or something like that. So it's going to move quite a bit of stuff on making a one-off copy. If I go over here somewhere, it's probably going to, let me move this out of the way. If I go back to my drive, my directory, we go to FileMaker Server, and then I got backups. So I'm going to scroll down here. Caches, progressive is right there. So is that under backups or that's not in data? Progressive, that's what it is. Okay, here we go. Here we go. So in progress means it's the one that you're never going to monkey with this. This is what it's working on right now. It's building this, right? Once it rolls one up every 5 minutes and completes it, it drops a complete copy in here. Okay. So
that's like your databases folder.
Yeah. Although it's kind of weird because this is not the way it used to. Hang on. I think it's still doing its stuff. So let's give it a second to finish its shenanigans.
Oh, you exited Oh, no, we can't see it from your screen share. Is it still churning? I was looking for that chart.
Yeah, it's been pretty busy. It's not done yet.
Yeah.
It's not done. Yeah, so it's still doing the initial build because my database set is, I probably don't have more than 300 or 400 megabytes of actual text data, but I've got 35 gigs and it's mostly all my aviation related digital documents for being a flight instructor and doing stuff like that. And I kind of slowed down over here. Okay, I'm wondering if it did something, it finished something. Nope, still going, I think. It's doing the initial build out is what it's doing. So at one point you should have two folders that have timestamps on them. It'll look a lot like like this, something like this, where you have a folder with a timestamp on it, something like that. That's the way it's going to look, is what you're going to have. So
yeah, you check the minutes on the end of it to figure out which one.
Yeah, which one it is. So yeah, this one is, or does it separate them now like this with something like this? Did they reorganize this? I don't, Jacob, I mean, you would know this. Do they? I thought
I have not looked at the progressive folder in detail with 21 specifically.
If they changed it, they should have told us. I don't think they changed anything. I think this thing is still churning.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's done now.
It's done now.
Okay, well then what the hell happened here? So let me go back to, let me just go to backups real quick just to make sure.
Yeah.
Okay, there's that. There's
progressive. Pull up our production server and see what it looks like. Hold on.
Yeah, you should load that on your side and see what happens. Progressive.
Let me see what ours
changes, interval. Of course, it might not do anything useful until it rolls through the first 5-minute process, right?
Yeah. See. Okay. Huh.
You want to?
Okay. So
you want to share yours or?
No, I'm gonna post a screenshot in Discord. That'll be easy.
Okay, so, Margaret, I'll let you grab that. I'm gonna quit sharing here. Let you grab that. You can share your screen and post it.
There it
But
is.
mine's still obviously spinning up, and the Margaret's got a Discord screenshot.
There you
Yeah,
go.
that's what it's supposed to look like. Okay, that's what it'll eventually do. So the changes and the copies are internal sausage making. The bottom ones are complete backups. You would grab one of those. So you've got July 18th, which is today at this is Lima time here, local time, 13:52. So that was a couple minutes ago, and then 13:57, and the next one will be 14:02 or something, right? So that's how. So if you were going to restore from one of these, you'd grab one of these, and that would be the backup folder that you would grab. Mine will eventually come to look like this. It's going to need a couple minutes. I don't turn, because I run a backup so aggressively all the time myself, I don't turn this on, but this was created for people who didn't want to lose any data other than 2 or 3 or 5 minutes worth of data. And then you could grab this and do a rest if your machine blew up, right? So incremental, they're called incrementals here, but in the documentation and whatnot, it's called progressives. Questions from anyone else, Margaret? Do we have any?
Jacob already answered this, but I'll ask it out loud. Do you have any numbers on the impact of writing to disk versus not writing to disk?
Depends. Okay, stop. Depends entirely on what your disk is. If you have a spinny disk, please hang up the phone and dial the 2024. Use a solid state drive or some sort of SSD, right? Yes. Then it's pretty fast. If you have a spinny disk from still, then that's a really bad thing. I mean, well, just in terms of you're giving up performance, and it's so cheap these days, right? I mean, Jacob, you can answer that,
Yeah.
I guess.
The way that we'll just say if you're concerned about cost, and I'm fully aware of clients who have like large data sets and are like, I don't really want to try and purchase an 8 or 10 or whatever terabyte SSD because it's money. You got to write a check.
Yeah.
One, you should write the check actually, but in the absence of that, if your management doesn't want to support that or something else, the only way that you're going to do that you can really like ameliorate that is you do actually still have to get an SSD, and it has to be able to contain some small multiple of your data set. Because what you're going to do is you're going to put the live databases on the NVMe disk, and then you're going to write the backups to your Mega SAN that's 120 terabytes or some, crazy amount of data or something like that. If you're in kind of an environment where things like that exist. If you're not in an environment like that, you should just be pursuing all SSDs because you probably have a data set that you can just pay for it.
Yeah. So on the FileMaker server that I was playing with momentarily, I go on the Mac. There's multiple 1 terabyte SSDs that are attached through USB-C on it, if that makes sense. And so it's pretty quick. And remember, the backups these days only backs up the files that have changed. So if most of my documents are container docs and they haven't changed, when it makes a backup, it hard links. We all clear on that, on the hard linking idea? Margaret, what is hard linking? Do you know what that means?
Nope.
Really? Okay. Let me share. This will be our last nugget for the day. Then we're going to land the airplane unless there's any further questions. I'm going to share my screen real quick here. All right, so if I go back over, I'm going to zoom out a little bit on this. So that mine is still over here figuring itself out. Oh, there's one of the incrementals right there. See that? So it created the first one at the top of the hour. So as of next 5 minutes, it'll keep 2. Only 2 will be maintained. So it is getting to that spot. I spaced briefly. Oh, hard linking. Okay, so hard linking is real quick on this. Let's talk about this briefly here. So over here on the side, I have the boot drive and the live database. It looks like a spin drive. That's the icon, but that's a very fast solid-state drive. This is an M2 Mac Mini with the M2 processor with the 24 gigs of RAM. It's pretty beefy. Everyone says a Mac Mini is not a server. I care to differ that it's pretty damn good server if you have a fairly modest needs. So these are all SSDs that are right here. So if I open up like this one right here, I'm just going to randomly pick one up. So here is a backup that ran a daily backup. It could be I have a daily and hourly. So here we go. Here's yesterday, 1 o'clock local time, 2 o'clock local time. So if the important thing to understand with hard linking, and this works on all the operating systems, is that if here's a 206B value calculator. This is a tool that I use to help to price out what a helicopter should cost based upon how used up it is, right? If you buy, it's like a used car calculator is all this is, okay? Now, if I don't update this, I don't change it, I'm not logged in, I don't change a single bit of data in it anywhere from 110 to 210, which is right here, is FileMaker going to write the 3.5 megabytes again? No. About the time they added incremental backups about 10, 12 years ago, they added this thing called hard linking, which says, okay, so on the physical hard drive, I already had written this one, say this is the first one it wrote, it writes this. It says, well, this one, I'm going to write another copy of it. It's identical. So if it's identical, why should I do it twice? Well, back in the old days, we did everything, we walked 5 miles in the snow, uphill each way, barefoot to school, right? But since that time, we said, well, we're not going to walk barefoot to school each day. We're going to take the bus or a plane or a parachute or something. This one here goes, this file here is going to be the identical same to this. So this file is actually on the hard drive saved. This is an alias. It's a pointer. Like it doesn't look like a pointer. It doesn't look at all like a pointer, but this one here points at this one right there. And so what FileMaker does, it says, well, there's this file here, and there's an indicator, a count of how many times it's been referenced elsewhere in the directory. So say I have a backup every day of the month, and I'm gone on vacation for a month. No one else uses it. I come back after a month. Well, that'd be 30 copies times 3.5 megabytes. No, it only uses 3.5, and then there's 30 references to it.
Okay, so does it never update the original that the aliases are pointing back to until something changes, or will it at some point swap?
Well, in an automatic fashion, it manages it automatically. So when it finally gets to the point where there's nothing referencing it, it will actually delete the 3.5 megabyte file. But it also means as a professional developer and the server crashes, you come over here, you don't grab any of the backups and move them. You copy them. If all the backups are pointing to this one right here, like a month's worth, and I grab this one, or I somehow, if I tell it to delete it, it's not going to delete. It lowers the count by 1. You understand, Margaret? If I click this, if I get rid of this, but if this actually happened to be the actual real file, and I move it or rename it or something, it's bad. You don't want to move it and make it live. You want to. If I'm going to hold the Option key down on the Mac, I'm going to make a copy. A little green icon on Windows is different, but it's going to make a copy. So this copy is a complete copy. So this had 30 references. This is a brand new file with only 1 reference. And this one could be the one that I would make live and use. Does that make sense? So you don't want to, that's why we always say copy the backups.
Yeah.
Because you're never quite sure if it's being used as a link anywhere. You don't know unless you start getting into the file and you get down into the structure of the directory and you do an information and you look where you look and can you see where it's at and how many times it's been referenced, blah, 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 blah. And does that make sense?
You will get cursed looking errors from FileMaker Pro communicated to your FileMaker Pro by FileMaker Server if you move instead of copy and paste one of those backups. And you will learn this the hard way because it will happen on the worst day of your life when you have to go in there and restore this thing to backups, because that's what you're in there doing and you've made a mistake while doing so. Fortunately, it doesn't happen too much anymore, but around once a year, someone will make that mistake and we will get an email that is the worst email you've ever read because they think they've lost their business. They think it's just toast and gone. And they have merely, I'll say merely, made a mistake in their backup restoration process.
But you could damage if you botcher it bad enough. So the goal is for you to realize you made a mistake and stop. Raise your hand, ask for help.
Yeah.
Okay? Except for next week. Don't do it next week because Jacob's gone. So, but our backup server guy is around, but he doesn't want to have to actually deal with that. So once again, if this was the backup that we wanted to grab, we would grab the whole thing and I would option drag it. See that? And then it's going to back up the whole. It's going to make a copy of the whole thing, and it's probably 50, 60, 80,000 files. Those aren't FMP12 files. There's only 10 or 12 FMP12 files, those are all externally stored remote containers. So there it goes. 42 gigs is my data set. So it's actually, in this case, none of these will be links because it's a brand new copy. These will all be a complete self-contained copy that we can mess with. And that way this stays unmolested over here. Super, super important concept. I can't emphasize this enough. Now the benefit of this is crazy because you can go over here and what you do is you start looking at like this hard drive right here, and you look in here and you say, how big, so it's 42 gigabytes, right? So if I have 42 gigabytes and how many copies in here, and you add it all up, and you're like, well, this is 5 terabytes of storage. Really? It's 5 terabytes of storage. You add all that up, I'm sure, however many copies, it's probably some big, huge number. But if you come over here and you say, how big is this actually in here? And you're like, well, the whole thing is 218 gigs. Well, if you think about 218 gigs divided by 43, that's 5, maybe 6 copies. Is this more than 6 copies? Can someone tell me if that's more than 6 copies? That's because hard linking is involved. So even though you add up the number over here, the hard drive knows that in reality, even if you add all this up over here, you use 28 terabytes, you've only actually used this little number here because it doesn't make unnecessary backups of files. It just links. This works on Windows, works on Mac, works on Linux.
We have a question.
Yes.
If you run a manual backup, would it create a new one, or would it just create another link?
Okay, the linking I think is limited to inside the schedule, right? Yep. So that makes sense. Correct. So this is a schedule in my system, and it repeats. This is schedule. This is schedule. So these 3 right here are automatically. If I create one of each, there'll be 3 complete backups in here for sure, at a minimum. That makes sense? So it doesn't cross-pollinate out your schedule. So if you manually run a schedule, it will be hard linked within that schedule. Does that make sense? So if I went over to here and I went back, or I don't even know where it's at. Did I lose my browser? Did I use my admin? Okay, let's go back in here again. Hello, there we go. I'm really glad we fixed my server today. That was good. If I go to backups, not these, I want configuration, I want schedules. So in here is a complete set. In here is at least one complete set. In here, at least one complete set. So if I run this, it won't affect any of these other ones. But if I manually run this one right now and I say run, it's going to make new files as it needs them and hard link to the ones that haven't changed. That's also why 43 gigabytes gets backed up in about 12.5 seconds. Mostly what it's doing is it's comparing the however many thousand files, it's comparing how many have changed. See, that was it. It's done. Yep. It was just doing a comparison of 40,000 files or whatever, right? Against that were they changed? Oh, they're not changed. Okay, we'll just increment that hard link by 1 + 1. Yep. See?
And also you can see where that might end up being a slow backup system. If you have, for example, as one of our clients do, say 8 million documents stored in your folder.
Yeah.
It has to check 8 million every hour. In this case, he's got hourly backups. So
yeah. So that's where you need bigger, better drives and hardware. So so in my case, I've got this is actually a current production Mac Mini. Brand new as of 3 or 4 months ago. It's an M2 Mac Mini with 24 gigs of RAM, and the drive speed is like 4 gigs a second or something like that. It's pretty fast. So this is as good as you could buy of this tier. It's like a $1,200 Mac Mini or whatever it was. So anyway, yeah, so that's how that works. Very, very important stuff. But even though I'm doing it on a Mac, it's going to be the same on Windows and also Linux. Make sense? So we're over time. I thought we were going to come under time, and then people ask about this, and this is all super relevant information. What's the one takeaway today? Don't blow anything up for at least a week. That's the one takeaway for today. Yes?
And don't drag backups.
Option drag or whatever you need to do to ensure that it's a copy, a legit copy.
And paste.
Yeah, copy, paste, whatever you need to do. But you're not moving it or molesting it, because you could be molesting the actual file, the one that's the actual. Because you can't tell visually, but one of these in here, it said this is all these are in here. One of these in here is going to be the original, or maybe they're probably this one's in here, and then this one down here has got an original for some other one, right? And so to build a complete set, it's an amalgamation. This is all handled automatically. You don't have to worry about it. You just can't restore the improper way, if that makes sense. So good stuff. I remember when this came out, I thought this was one of those moments like when script triggers came out, you realize that Claris Engineering was bad and we're doing great products and great things. I loved it because it suddenly made backups manageable instead of completely unmanageable.
Instead of thousands of gigs.
Well, back in the day, this was all spin drive. This came out, we had spin drives. Oh, you got a 7,200 RPM drive. Blah, 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 blah. Right? So this makes huge time stopwatch differences, time differences on a spin drive. On all drives, but spin drives, it went from, it's a 15-minute backup to, 60 seconds or something. Because it would realize that nothing had changed. Or one file had changed. Backup, make one copy of the one file, the rest of it stays the same. All right, well, that's it for today. I'm going to stop sharing. Margaret, you can land the airplane. Jacob Taylor, we wish you the best next week. Please try to have fun. Enjoy yourself.
I will.
All right, that's it. See you, everyone.
Bye, everybody.